Joes and Janes, back with another vintage G.I. Joe review, and we're working our way through the original team, and the next character has been decided on by the latest Patreon poll, so thanks to all the patrons for voting, and it is for, in my opinion, the most iconic G.I. Joe character there is. And for this special review, we've got a special guest reviewer. This one is going to be Commando style. Like a real Commando, not, you know, the kind without underwear. Okay, you know what? This isn't exactly turning out to be the silent interlude that I thought it was going to be, so I'll take over from here. But thanks so much for coming out. Thanks, Snake Eyes. Yeah, awesome. Okay. Yo, Joe. Okay, and as Snake Eyes alluded to earlier, there are a couple of Snake Eyes items up for pre-order at Big Bad Toy Store. There's the Transformers vs. G.I. Joe minifigures coming out soon, and Snake Eyes is one of them. But if you want the classic outfit, the original visor mask look, there's some classic style G.I. Joe glasses coming out featuring the exploding background of this Snake Eyes. It's actually the newer rendition from the anniversary figures, but it's old Snake Eyes kneeling, pointing, and using his Uzi. So I wanted to kick this review off with the file card because it is one of my favorites. I remember reading this at the store when I first saw this figure, and I've mentioned before, I always thought this guy was a bad guy because all of the Joes were in green, and while Stalker had camo, Scarlet wasn't in green, but she looked very heroic like. This guy was dressed in all black. And knowing about Darth Vader being in all black, and a lot of villains, Angel Eyes from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was in all black, I just assumed this guy was one of the villains, one of the Cobras, especially since his code name was Snake Eyes. So I was very surprised to learn that he was actually a G.I. Joe. And one of the coolest aspects of his file card is that his file name is classified, and his birthplace is classified. So he wasn't quite a ninja at this point, but his secondary specialty was hand-to-hand combat instructor. So that alluded to the fact that he wasn't just good with explosives and weapons, but with actual hand-to-hand combat. And the bio reads, Snake Eyes is proficient in 12 different unarmed fighting systems, karate, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, and is highly skilled in the use of edged weapons, so alluding to the sword he would have later on. Has received extensive training in mountaineering, underwater demolitions, jungle, desert, and Arctic survival, and some form of holistic medicine. Qualified expert all NATO and Warsaw Pact small arms, and the quote reads,
The man is a total mystery, but he's real good at his job. Heck, he's the best.
So we looked at Scarlet's file card in the previous review, and that really made her seem like the ultimate soldier, and all of the Joes are really the cream of the crop. So for this guy's bio to say, well, he's the best of them all, it really smashes him over as the ultimate soldier and the ultimate G.I. Joe. And I think that was something they had to do because well, Snake Eyes didn't actually have any paint applications for his original figure. Now this is the 83 version. The major difference between the 83 and the original 82 version is the swivel arm. The original one didn't have swivel arm. He had a straight arm, like this Grand Slam. And a few tweaks here and there, mainly with the waist. But because he didn't have any paint applications whatsoever, I'm talking not even light gray or silver here or there. Some of the reissues of this figure over the years have had some very slight minor paint applications, but this guy was just black from head to toe to save on costs. So another cost-saving technique that was used in the initial year of G.I. Joe was to reuse parts. So Snake Eyes here reuses parts from these two figures and similar figures. He's got the chest and back of Grunt and some of the other figures that use that same body. It's the collar, similar collar on both figures. Also for the 83 figures, he uses the same arms as Grunt. They actually changed the upper body, upper arm of Grunt 2 to have the pocket on the front. And the waist is also identical to the waist of most of the Joes, male Joes, of the first year. Here you can see how the 82 waist is a little more, I guess you could say, bloated, if you remember the bloated Optimus Prime fists and gun from the initial Prime release. And then the legs, from the knee down, are the Grand Slam legs, which have kind of a boot covering to them, whereas the standard infantry Joes have more of a standard looking boot. And the really interesting thing that I just noticed while doing this very review is that Snake Eyes has a different leg, thigh part, than any of the other Joes. So I had a quick look through all of the initial Joes, and none of them has this explosive device looking thing on this side of the leg, and on the other side of the leg none of them has this double pouch right here. They either have this Grunt pouch or something thinner, but for a figure that was done production wise on the cheap with no paint applications, he actually got to have some unique parts here in terms of the Joe figures. I'd always thought that Snake Eyes was put together from parts of all the other Joes and just featured a new unique head, but that's not the case. So let's take a closer look at the figure. Very ominous, mysterious head, and I like that he's made out of shiny black. And I was very lucky to find this guy at a local toy convention recently, because the other one I had, 83 Snake Eyes, was really beat up, scuffed up. This is more like I remember him when I had him as a kid. Really glossy, shiny, just immersed in shadows. I just love how the light bounces off of him. So he wears a mask to hide his disfigurement, which has some breathing holes right there. Articulation, same as any G.I. Joe. Got that great swivel arm, knee bend. I don't want to be moving this guy too much. He feels a little tight, so I don't want to be snapping anything. I know he does have an elbow crack right here. Hard to see though. Doesn't bother me that much because I don't really look all that close anyway, but he's just so dark and shrouded. You can't really see much damage anyway. Let's talk about his accessories. So Snake Eyes includes an Uzi. One of the coolest weapons for the early Joes. So the other Joes came with rifles, heavy machine gun or mortar, and this made Snake Eyes seem even more deadly to me, because this was, like, as a kid, I didn't know what an Uzi was. It looked like a pistol to me. It was an automatic pistol, submachine gun. So that to me made him seem even more dangerous, that he doesn't need a giant machine gun like Rock and Roll or a mortar like Short Fuse. This guy sneaks in. That's what a commando does. Sneaks in and does the damage on his own. And so that could have been it, but they included one more accessory, this explosives pouch.
We're in a pinch, Snake. What do you have? Magnet grenades, huh?
And it's always kind of a pain to get it to stay on him. You could go over his head and have him wear it across his chest, but I've seen when you do that, it'll deform this strap right here and make it wide. If you try it like that, he's fine as long as he's got one arm up, but it'll usually want to fall off, so you want to tuck his hand like that so that it still slips down. But again, another little thing that makes him seem kind of dangerous, because I always as a kid imagined it was explosives in there. He's kind of G.I. Joe's saboteur. Their version of, or Firefly was Cobra's version of Snake Eyes, I should say. And the past meets the present, even though I guess this guy is part of the past now, but 2007 seems like just yesterday to me, so I still consider this guy modern and recent. He was released as part of a 5-pack. And this first release of the anniversary Snake Eyes is more on the gray side, especially when you put him next to the original. But the modern anniversary figures have so many cool little features, like removable, this belt harness is removable. He's got a removable knife on his leg, very easy to lose. And also this gun right here on his belt can be pulled out of the holster, and you can actually have the figure hold the gun. So they decided to not go as sparse on the paint applications, almost as much, but he does have a little bit of green and silver on his grenade here. Really tiny details, a little silver spot right there, and that looks like it's painted a different gray a little bit. Got a bit of silver on the leg there. So that was the 2007 5-pack version. And then they did release that same modern figure, but on an anniversary single card. And this one was done in much darker black plastic. It's not as shiny as the original figure, because this is harder plastic and this is more of a bendy, rubbery plastic. But I think that one looks a lot better. And one of the later Snake Eyes figures had a head that I thought looked much more similar to the original mask, with the goggles and the breathing holes. This one right here is from the 5-pack, and I just felt like the goggles, maybe you can see the detail of the goggles going all the way around the head. You don't really get that with the original figure. You sort of do. It's faint. But this particular head, I thought, just looked a lot more like original Snake Eyes, or maybe I'm thinking of the comic. But I just liked how that one looked a lot more, so I popped it onto that body. And then one more modern figure, which I thought was really cool, was the radioactive Snake Eyes version from the mass device. So the more popular, well-known version of Snake Eyes is the one with the different kind of visor, the 85 version that came with Timber. And this costume was actually only used in 5 episodes of the original G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero animated series. the first 5 Mass Device miniseries. In the comic, it actually lasted a little bit longer. He wears it up until issue 42, I believe, and then the 85 costume debuts in issue 45, I believe. But in the Mass Device, Snake Eyes retrieves the radioactive crystals, and so this figure included the canister with the crystals in it, and this really cool effect of translucent feet, parts of his arms, his elbows, he's got translucent elbows, and a little bit of his head too. The light goes through it really nicely. This bright green grenade is kind of gaudy, but it's a cool effect. And he's also got no gloves. His flesh is exposed on his hands, which I always thought was kind of weird. It demystified him just a tiny bit. I guess they wanted to express, because he couldn't talk, they wanted to express, I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking, but I would have preferred his depiction in the cartoon to be more like this, just covered from head to toe. Leave it to your imagination. It doesn't matter what ethnicity he is, even what gender. I don't know if they would be able to disguise his gender too, but I just like the fact that he is all about his abilities and not about the other stuff like his nationality, other stuff like that, his age. None of that is relevant. The only thing that's relevant is his skill. So that's 82/83 Snake Eyes. A simple looking figure on the surface, but a real representation of the old adage, less is more. And proof that a really compelling, mysterious, enigmatic character can lead to one of the most popular and valuable figures of all time. This one runs quite a bit more than most of the other Joes if you're looking to snag one at a convention or on eBay. Thanks to all the good brothers and sisters on Patreon for showing your support for the channel and for voting on this Patreon poll to help decide this review. If you have a Snake Eyes comment, scroll down and go to town. And to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Yo, Joe!